Welcome to the SATLUJ News Hour. This is Ginger Jeffries coming to you from the Phoenix desk, bringing you the top stories from across the globe. Here are today's headlines. Taiwan on high alert as China's military might make a sudden entry. Huge fire at refugee camp in Bangladesh leaves thousands without shelter. Estonia election secures a big win for center-right party. Topping the news today, Taiwan is on high alert for another sudden entry by the Chinese military into areas close to its territory. China has stepped up its military activities around Taiwan in recent years, including almost daily Air Force incursions into the island's Air Defense Identification Zone. Taiwan has not reported any incident of Chinese forces entering its common zone. Defense Minister Chiu Kuo-cheng said the Chinese People's Liberation Army might find excuses to enter the areas close to Taiwan's air and sea space as Taiwan now steps up its military exchanges with the United States. In response, a spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry said that Beijing will take firm measures to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity.
中方敦促美方恪守一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报的规定，停止售台武器和美台军事联系，停止制造台海局势紧张因素。中方将继续采取坚决有力措施，坚定捍卫自身主权和安全利益。
Taiwan has said it will exercise its right to self-defense and counterattack if Chinese armed forces enter its territory. A massive fire raced through a refugee camp for Rohingya Muslims in southern Bangladesh. The blaze erupted at Camp 11 in Cox's Bazar, which is a southeastern border district where more than 1 million refugees now live. Most of the refugees fled a military-led crackdown in Myanmar in 2017, and the fire has now left thousands homeless. The fire rapidly engulfed the shelters. At least 35 mosques and 21 learning centers were all destroyed. However, there were no reports of injuries or deaths. More than 1 million Rohingya refugees fled to Bangladesh over several decades, including more than 700,000 who crossed the border starting in August 2017 when the Myanmar military launched a brutal crackdown. North Korea is complaining once again as the country has called on the United Nations to demand an immediate halt to joint military drills by the United States and South Korea. In a statement, the Vice Foreign Minister said the drills have pushed tensions to an extremely dangerous level, adding that the UN and the international community will have to strongly urge the U.S. and South Korea to immediately halt their provocative remarks and joint military exercises. The statement comes after officials from Seoul and Washington announced large-scale military exercises. North Korea sees the drills as a rehearsal for an invasion. The allies have said the exercises are defensive and are necessary to counter the rising threats from North Korea's ballistic missile and nuclear weapons programs, which are banned by UN Security Council resolutions. Surprising announcements coming in from China as the National People's Congress has now kicked off its annual session, announcing a modest target for economic growth of only 5%.
The main projected targets for development this year are as follows. GDP growth of around 5%, around 12 million new urban jobs. Surveyed urban unemployment rate of around 5.5%.
The session, which began in Beijing on Sunday, also is set to hand President Xi Jinping a third term in office and implement the biggest government shakeup in a decade. Outgoing Premier Li Qiuqiang said it was essential to prioritize economic stability and set a goal of economic growth at around 5%, which happens to be one of the country's lowest in decades. The report also announced a target of creating about 12 million jobs this year. Li said during his speech, global inflation remains high, global economic and trade growth is losing steam, and external attempts to suppress and contain China are escalating. The Chinese government also set a budget deficit target of 3% of the GDP. Coming up next, 5 killed in a new Azerbaijan and Armenia clash. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break.
Go where no one has gone before. Between the sounds of bombs and the whisperings, echoes of truth. Confronting power with courage and lighting the darkest shadows to inform and inspire. Flowing with truth and charting our own path. SATLUJ Network. Let the truth flow.
Welcome back. This is the SATLUJ Network from the Phoenix desk. The latest in the Armenia-Azerbaijan border crisis as gunfire in the mountainous south region kills at least 5 people. Azerbaijan's defense ministry said 2 servicemen were killed after troops stopped a convoy it suspected of carrying weapons from the region's main town to the outlying areas, claiming the convoy has used an unauthorized road. Armenia's foreign ministry said 3 officials were killed. The convoy had been carrying documents and a surface pistol, it said, dismissing Azerbaijan's allegations that weapons were being carried as absurd. It said Azerbaijan's version of the events was a provocation planned in advance and instructed by their top leadership. It's election season and voters in Estonia have elected a new parliament with results suggesting a big win for the center-right Reform Party of Prime Minister Kaja Kallas. 99% of ballots counted showed that the far-right EKRE party is in second place, with 16.1% versus 31.5% for Kallas's more moderate group, reflecting concerns among some voters over the rising cost of living in the wake of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. If Kallas wins, it would cement the Baltic nations' pro-European direction.
We have to do major reforms regarding green transition, for example, but we also have to invest in our security. Our aggressive neighbor has not vanished and will not vanish, so we have to work with that. And also we have issues like regional cohesion, but also education system that is the best in the world, but there is still, we need the Estonian language education, so that is also a big reform.
Estonia would also stay on course to adopt more green energy and continue to accept refugees from Ukraine. Kallas said the election left her party in a strong position to form a coalition government that would keep calling for pressure on Russia. Rules haven't changed as male students are coming back to classes after universities reopened in Afghanistan following a winter break. Meantime, women remain barred by the ruling Taliban. The university ban is one of several restrictions imposed on women since the Taliban stormed back into power in August 2021, sparking global outrage. The Taliban government imposed the ban, accusing female students of ignoring a strict dress code and a requirement to be accompanied by a male relative to and from campus. Most universities had already introduced gender-segregated entrances and classrooms, as well as ordering women to be taught only by female professors or old men. Several Taliban officials say the ban on women's education is temporary, but despite promises, they have failed to reopen secondary schools for girls, which have been closed now for more than a year. Qatar is helping out Turkey by sending 400 temporary homes to help those affected by the devastating earthquakes. The structures were used to house fans during the 2022 World Cup. Right now, 2 million people in Turkey and Syria are living in temporary shelters after the earthquake started on February 6, which left more than 50,000 people dead.
In this ship there are almost 400 houses. This is the first batch of 10,000 houses. From the first day we continue supporting our brothers in Turkey and in northern Syria. We hope this will be suitable for the earthquake survivors.
Qatar's ambassador says more shelters are now on the way. The ambassador also mentioned they hope this is going to be suitable for the earthquake survivors. Coming up next, farmers protest in Brussels over plans to limit nitrogen emissions. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break.
Hello, my name is Jeffries.
Do you ever wonder what's behind the news? What is it that you are not being told? Going behind the news and finding the truth. Let the truth flow. SATLUJ Network. Let the truth flow.
Welcome back. This is the SATLUJ Network from the Phoenix desk. Farmers from Belgium's northern region of Flanders drove thousands of tractors into Brussels in a protest against a new regional government plan to limit nitrogen emissions. Relatively large numbers of livestock and heavy use of fertilizers, as well as traffic and construction, have led to levels of nitrogen oxides in the air and the water. Now, those levels are higher than EU regulations. As a result, the government now wants to limit those emissions. Media reports say the farmers are refusing to cooperate with the new expected limits. Authorities estimate the number of tractors clogging the streets at 2,700. Environment and disaster authorities in the Philippines rushed to contain an oil spill from a sunken fuel tanker, as some of the oil has now already reached the coastal towns on the eastern side of the Mindoro Island. The tanker, named the Princess Empress, was carrying 800,000 liters of industrial fuel oil when it ran into engine trouble, rough seas, and then sank. 20 crew members were rescued before it went down. At risk of damage includes more than 1,400 acres of coral reefs, mangroves, and seagrass. Experts say the contamination of these areas may affect the viabilities of these ecosystems. Some are already comparing it to the 2006 incident when a tanker carrying 2.1 million liters of bunker fuel ran aground in the central Philippines. A French civil court dismissed a case against oil giant Total Energies over a massive project in Uganda and Tanzania. It was the first case of its kind in France where activists hoped to set a legal precedent. At issue, a $3.5 billion crude oil pipeline in East Africa. In 2019, a half-dozen French and Ugandan environmental groups filed a lawsuit against energy giant Total Energies. Now that's the company building the project. Court documents say the plaintiffs are asking the court to stop construction based on a 2017 duty of vigilance French law that requires companies to identify human rights and environmental risks in their global operations and then take measures to prevent them.
The environment is broken down into two parts, so we could have effects on loss of biodiversity cover if you look at the area that is being cleared in form of roads and in form of the pads themselves that are being constructed. And of course, if there is no restoration, then you lose that biodiversity, you lose that vegetation cover, and that vegetation cover is even a habitat for some of the small living organisms.
The lawsuit accuses Total Energies of taking land from more than 100,000 people without adequate compensation. They also said the company drills wells in the biodiversity-rich Murchison Falls National Park on the shores of Lake Albert.
Then, of course, activities such as road construction and failure to prevent the animals from accessing the sites could lead to direct death of animals. We've been talking about accidents arising from motorists if the speed is not regulated. And then, of course, other aspects such as dust, of course, also affect the health of animals, the respiration of the animals, not only the wildlife, but also the human beings and even the workers.
The pipeline runs a little more than 1,400 kilometers. It will transport crude oil from fields being developed in Lake Albert of northwestern Uganda to a Tanzanian port on the Indian Ocean. Lake Albert is a natural border between Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo and lies atop 6.5 billion barrels of crude oil. 40% of that treasure trove is expected to be farmed.
Because we have cobs, you can see in my background, there are quite a number of cobs grazing freely, and we have ensured that there is minimum noise around the ridge. And you can see there is a perimeter wall around, so that is to make sure that the animals do not come closer to the ridge. The good thing is that some of these animals are adaptive. Like elephants, they will always see if the road has not been in place and the road is in place, they will always try to cross to see whether it is possible for them to cross the road. So most of the animals have not been blocked, I must say.
The Tanzanian Energy Ministry rejected the environmental rights concerns as propaganda, saying the country complied with environmental, safety, and human rights standards. The French court agreed with that statement, dismissing the case against Total Energies.
And after the drilling, imported material was removed and the area was restored. Some grass was brought, planted, and now it started establishing and looking the way you are seeing it. The way it is, it has recovered satisfactorily, and it is like as if no activity has ever been done here.
A lawyer representing the activists said they would take time to digest the decision and then discuss whether they will appeal. Reporting for the SATLUJ Network, I'm Ginger Jeffries. And those were our top stories for today. Thank you very much for joining us. This is the SATLUJ Network, the news network that lets truth flow. For more information and full story coverage, go to satlujnetwork.com, and we'd love to hear your feedback at info@satlujtv.com. We'll see you next time.